on.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another conversation. Before he became an executive in the U.S., Eric Jones was a young boy growing up in rural Jamaica, shaped by family, struggle, aspiration, and the early influences that leave a permanent mark. His life has carried him through immigration, education, leadership, fatherhood, setbacks, and services. Today, he joins us to reflect on how life is formed and what those early years can teach us all. My co host, Chris Daly, will be doing the interview. So take it away, Chris.
Thanks, Denise and Eric. Welcome. Well, how you doing, Eric? Are you with us?
Oh, yes, yes. So,
Yeah, good, good.
thank you so
Welcome to
much.
a rich conversation. And I just want to congratulate you on writing a riveting book, Life Lessons from Two Worlds. As I was saying with you earlier, it has such a riveting cover. And you were so gracious to say you had a great artist that did that. But it's within the pages we're going to be discussing tonight. So let's begin by framing it for people and giving them a sense of who you are. Let's start from the beginning, your early years in rural Jamaica. What happened there? What your parents were like, and what shaped you most there?
Okay, first, let me thank you both for this opportunity. I really appreciate this and I'm looking forward to this conversation. What shaped me most? So, I was born into a large family, the last of six children from my parents' marriage. So, in Jamaica, I'm called the wash belly, which
Mm.
brought its own sense of favored treatment, but also modest amount of sibling rivalry or envy.
Yeah, you're the Joseph.
Exactly. But I was shaped most by two powerful opposing forces.
Ah,
On one hand was my father, a bold and confident man, but financially irresponsible, a womanizer, a gun lover, and a believer in Obia, you
okay.
know, who set all the wrong examples for my siblings and me. And then on the other hand, there was my mother, a warm, wise, and deeply spiritual woman, entrepreneurially driven by the need to fill the financial gaps left by my father. Self-sacrificial for her children, and at the same time a philanthropist and political activist who strived to help everyone in the neighborhood that were in need. She kept me from following the morally bankrupt example set by my father and was my pillar of strength and role model.
Mm. Wow, that's wonderful. So, I'm glad you had such a strong mother who filled in that gap. Uh, how did you think you sensed the absence of an effective father in your life?
So, um, my father, around the age of 5 or 6, I start to observe the pattern of his absence. This was a father who was a part-time father. He showed up on Monday mornings, disappeared on Wednesday evenings, returned on Saturday mornings, and disappeared again on Saturday evening. But more impactful than his absences, right, was what he exposed me to, and his
Mm,
inappropriate behavior and how he made it seem normal. Um,
mm,
besides his constant use of Jamaican bad words in every conversation,
okay.
which he encouraged me to imitate. He would have me tag along as his sidekick on his road trips. He was one of those unlicensed dentists, so he provided dental care in rural areas of Manchester, Clarendon, and Trelawney.
Okay.
And so when I tagged along at that young age of 5 and 6, during these trips, he would invariably stop at homes of multiple women and occasionally an Obia man for consultation. So this is the kind of thing that this man exposed me to at that young age, you know.
Wow.
But luckily, my mother was vigilant in her questioning of where I had been and what I saw, and would advise me on which of my father's activities were inappropriate. In retrospect, even at that young age, I was still able to weigh the merits of my mother's advice versus my father's misguidance, and thankfully gravitated toward my mother's counsel. So in
Wow.
summary, I saw myself kind of caught between two extremes, but
Yes.
still at that tender age, having to decide between wrong and right.
Yeah, what? That's so compelling. So apart from, yeah, certainly I'm thankful for a very strong mother, but there are other community members, maybe a teacher or church community that help give you some additional molding and formation.
So, of course, first and foremost, it's my mother. But second would be my teachers. I love school and I absorbed everything I was taught like a sponge. So,
Mm,
between gravitating towards her wisdom and counsel, it was basically for me, my other route was school. And so
okay.
I gravitated towards school, loved school, would show up at school, before everybody in the morning, before the gate was open.
Okay. This is wonderful. So you had a love for school that you showed up even early. So you're starting to see then a bigger purpose for your life. And was any particular teacher that kind of nurtured that possibility for you?
Um, I, I I wouldn't say there was a particular teacher, but as far back as I can remember, when asked, um, what do I want to grow up to become?
Yes.
You know, I always responded, I wanted to be a doctor, you know.
Mm,
Um, and although my career path changed over time, and perhaps because I was academically a good student, I didn't see my circumstances or anything around me as an hindrance to being able to accomplish my dreams.
right.
So, in some way I was blessed. And again, my mother did instill that level of self-confidence that, she enabled us, she provided for us. She made school seem important. I grew up with the mantra, silver and gold may vanish away, but a good education will never decay. I was routinely pounded into my head from infant school. So
Mm.
it was something that drove me to have and hold on to the belief that I can achieve anything I want.
So apart from just the acquisition of knowledge, it seemed like it gave you a path forward. Um, how do you think it opened that vista for you for a larger world?
Um, so you know, if I went through primary school in Jamaica, then high
Mhm.
school, then I moved on to university. And at each step along the way, as I said earlier, I started out thinking that I wanted to be a medical doctor. But although my path changed over time, I was still convinced that, or was still driven by the belief that I could achieve anything, you know.
Great.
And I guess I have to pay a tribute to my mother for that, a lot of that. And again, I grew up around my siblings, seeing them judiciously attending school, speaking of their own career ambitions. And so all of that kind of played into, my drive to strive for better and achieve.
Wow. One of your telling quotes is you said your heritage should strengthen us, not trap us. And
Hmm.
you certainly was able to navigate that path. Um, how did you come to that realization that given the circumstances of your life, you did not let that become any hindrance beyond just the influence of your mother, your own self-purpose?
Right. So, from an early age, as I looked around, I started to recognize my family's ethnic diversity when we talk about heritage. Uh,
Yes.
However, I also sensed from very early the oneness of all Jamaicans, most
Okay.
exemplified, of course, in our motto, which as a child I was made to repeat all the time out of many one people.
Yes.
I believe I speak for most Jamaicans when I say we put nationality above ethnicity, regardless of whether we're Black, Indian, Chinese, white, or multi ethnic. And, for this reason, I never grew up feeling any limitation or advantage based on race, any feelings or limitation would have had more to do with economic stratification of society, which we know exist.
Yeah.
Basically the haves and the have-nots. You know, it was not until I had my ancestry DNA test and commenced my family tree research for writing this book that I discovered the wide breadth of my own family roots, going as far back as 4 generations to 1799.
Wow.
And while there were some salient gaps, particularly with the ancestry of my grandmother, this made me even feel more empowered, knowing the richness of this discovered family lineage, spanning Africa, Asia, India, Europe,
Hmm. So, given that circumstances, we have young people of a younger generation who are in similar circumstances, and sometimes they do not take the kind of advice that you have. Do you have a word of wisdom for them to encourage their heart?
So, if I look at, depending on the age of the child, if you're
Mhm.
talking about very young kids, nothing beats the presence of a parent, or preferably both parents, right? In my case, like many other children growing up, they have only one, and I cannot emphasize, especially knowing my situation. Was my mother not there for me? Where would I have ended up? You know, um,
Mm.
she had six of us, actually seven, because she had a child before she got married, and none of us have brought her shame. And it is. I think we have made her proud. And was she not there, we would have strayed, or potentially strayed. So we got to start with the parents and cannot absolve parents of that responsibility at all. But, if I was to tell a child who is, a little more matured, um, and can take some telling, it would be that, follow your innate instincts, listen to the wisdom, and emulate the virtues of the good people around you. And in most cases, it's gonna be your mother. You know, never
Mm.
wallow in failures or unfortunate circumstances, because we all go through them, and at times they're in fact blessings in disguise. Right? You might come up through some hard circumstances, but they can turn out to be blessings in disguise, redirecting us towards paths even far richer than any success could have carved. So, those would be my advice to children, adolescents, you know, um, to go forward.
That's great advice. And that kind of takes us to the next point. You made a decision to immigrate. Tell us a little about how you came to that choice and conviction,
So,
and how you went about
I say in chapter one of the book that it seemed as if I was destined for a bicultural journey.
it. Okay.
My my mother chose to give me the middle name George Washington.
Okay.
You know, I asked her at some point when I became cognizant that this was the name of the first president of the United States, why she chose to do that. At first, she said, she wasn't even thinking about it. She just wanted to add a distinction to my father, who was Eric Washington Jones. So she added George, Eric George Washington Jones.
Got you.
So I always think that somehow it is kind of a predestined path somehow. But
Yes.
again, growing up as a child, um, I don't think any Jamaican growing up in Jamaica, especially those of lesser means, have not been enamored by the idea that the United States was a place filled with opportunities, and I guess that lure and that lure for great opportunity started to plant a seed from I was young, you know.
Mm.
And again, I had uncles, aunts, brothers, sisters who emigrated, and of course, kind of continued to fuel that lure. So it wasn't even like I had to make a distinct decision, you know.
Yeah.
I first came to the United States as a permanent resident, just to give you an idea. You know, my
Okay.
mother emigrated late in life. You know, my sister filed for her, brought her here, and her whole purpose was to file for three of her kids. You know,
Mm.
um, and so I just kind of fall in there. As a matter of fact, I you know I had to go back a few terms back to university to finish up at UE, even after I had emigrated from Jamaica to the US. You know, but leaving Jamaica and coming to the US wasn't, you know, and I try to emphasize this all the time. It's not an abandonment of Jamaica or lack of patriotism. It's you know, because in many ways we are like flag bearers for the island. You know,
Yes.
we don't let go of our roots. We're proud of our roots. You know, my accent, my Jamaican accent will always be there. Uh,
Yes.
whether I'm in a board meeting at the highest executive level or not, they're gonna hear my Jamaican accent, uh, you know, and they're gonna know that this is where I come from, you know. So we are flag bearers, and we fly the flag high wherever we go, and you know, everybody know that we are hard workers, you know, and we value Jamaica. We love Jamaica in times of crisis and misery. We're there for the island. You know, Melissa was an example. You know, through the remittances from all the Jamaicans in diaspora, you know,
Yes.
we help the island. So, you know, that's how I came to emigrate from the island.
Wonderful. That's an immigrant that came here and had impact. So you went through college, and then you had an illustrious career. Um,
Yes, thank God. You know,
yeah,
uh,
give us a snapshot. You capture that well in the book, and so the book is a reflection on the life in these two cultures. What was it like first? To navigate a different culture and to be as successful as you are have been.
so you know, I first came here with the intention, actually, of going to dental school. So after I finished
Okay.
UA, I came here with that intention. But you know, I talk about it in the book and how my path actually ended up changing. You
Mm,
know, first job I had with a consulting agency, they provided tuition reimbursement, and but for something related to what their company was about, not dentistry. You know,
right.
and circumstances kind of dictated that, you know what, make use of this opportunity. So I ended up doing a master's degree. Um, you know, I went through a period of trying to deal with the inequities that are here in this country, inequities in the workplace, and I go into great depth about that in the book.
Hmm.
And by inequities, you know, we're talking about, you know, we come from Jamaica with this idea that we're gonna be judged on merit, right?
Hmm.
And we're gonna do our absolute best, and the rewards will come. And that wasn't really the case. You know, I started to notice that I'm getting excellent reviews. I'm showered with accolades, you know, but you're seeing that things aren't aligning. So, you
Mm.
know, I took a step back and I said, okay, so I'm here in this country. Am I gonna continue in the private sector and deal with this potential uh, of, you know, others do it and others are successful at it, but for me, I said, you know what, I don't want to deal with this. So I looked for the alternative, and the alternative was public service.
Okay.
Because what I found was that in my research was that in the public sector, immigrants, minorities, had a greater representation and opportunity for advancement, and so I made my move, and I never regretted it. You know, a part of it actually, the idea for public service was also something that resonated with me. This was my mother's kind of uh, fabric. That was her fabric because she did a lot
Yes.
of public service. So working for an organization delivering public service that was gratefully impactful to the entire city, um, you know, provided a lot of satisfaction. And while there, another opportunity came around to do another master's degree, and so I pursued a second master's degree.
Okay.
And over time, my suspicions were correct, or my research proved correct, that I would be rewarded for my hard work. I'd be credited for based on my merit, and that continued for my 31 years at that organization.
Wow. And you rose to the rank of senior vice president.
So I rose to the rank of vice president, and then for
Vice
the
president.
last 7 months I was there, I was the interim senior vice president. Yes.
Got you. Okay. Hmm. Well, obstacles did not stop you, and I'm glad you chronicled this. That the journey in life is never a straight line; it's detour. It takes perseverance and stick-to-itiveness, and you certainly express that in this book. Um, so people say these days folks are soft, right? When they run against resistance, they seem to wilt. Speak to those people today. Give them some encouragement.
So
And
I don't
why
think
and why you yeah.
I don't think that's a Jamaican trait, actually.
Okay. Well, the audience may be, as you
That's
said,
true.
third
That's true.
generation.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I think I gotta give credit to my nationality and my roots, because we tend not to back down.
Mhm.
And just within my, I saw what my mother went through, and it's documented in the book, uh, the struggles that she went through, and was still able to raise a family of seven children, and even adopted two along the way,
Mm.
uh, despite her hardships and her childhood trauma. Um, these were things that made me, when I think that I want to give up, or I think that a task is too hard, or a challenge is insurmountable, I just reflect on her, because there's I just could not back down from anything. And what I learned along the way, and this will serve for many others. You might not have a mother who give you that. You can lean on her experiences and her upbringing and what she taught you. But the reality is that when we think that we fail, right? Failure teaches a lot more than success.
Yeah.
So whenever you come across something, and it may just have been the fact that that is not your path, right? And you get redirected somewhere else, just hang on, never give up, and just believe that your destiny may not be what you thought it was. Be willing to make turns, you know, be willing to uh, absorb and think and listen and look, and be flexible, be adaptable, you know.
Mm.
Adaptability is important. We might have our thoughts set on one particular thing, and just wearing blinders and not seeing the opportunities that surround us.
Exactly. To write a book takes that kind of characteristic. So tell us a little about what motivated you to write the book, and how and why did you write?
So my first I've always had the desire to be an author. And throughout my academic career, I've had to author theses for my master's. I've had a publication in the journal of in the proceedings of a conference, but scientifically related. But never had the opportunity to write, a book, author an entire book that's non-academic. And from around 1997, I had this idea, and I jotted down some notes, and it just sat there dormant. At the time I retired, um, it dawned on me that this was shortly after I retired, that this was an opportunity. Um, I took out that sheet of paper I had from 1997,
Mm.
I dusted off, I looked it over, and I said, what do I want to write about? I have experiences to share, but beyond those experiences to share, what have I learned that I can share with somebody else that somebody may find of value? And that's when it came to me, and I came up with the outline for the book and the title, Life Lessons from Two Worlds, my Jamaican American journey. And as you go through the book, you will see at the end of every chapter, I distill some of that knowledge into insights that
Yeah.
I call life lessons, that somebody can reflect on. It's short, it's tight. It gives you a quick insight into what I have learned through that phase or that chapter of my life.
This is great. It's graduation season. What would it? Who would this book best help in realizing their next lift in life?
I think first and foremost, I'm an immigrant, and
Mhm.
immigrants in particular, especially like new immigrants, um, would find a lot of value in navigating you know, through this place we call America. Um, some of the things they could expect to face in the workplace. Um, I have a chapter, the arc of my professional life, where I talk about, I give insights into leadership and my idea of leadership. You know, what were some of my principles of labor and
Mhm.
leadership? Um, so it would appeal to somebody who's aspiring for greater things, higher rank, to move up the ladder, the corporate ladder, so to speak.
Yes.
Um, for graduates, maybe, non-immigrants, um, they're gonna find those kind of values in there as well. It's about career, it's about resilience, it's about adaptability. You may choose one career path and think that is, don't wear blinders, you know.
Mm.
Uh, as I said, when I came to this country, my idea was I was gonna go to dental school, right?
Mm.
But the fact that I never ended up going to dental school, I have no regrets that I didn't, right? Because I found another path that served me well and brought me satisfaction, you know, and brought me this kind of success I desired. So that's what I would say. Just do not wear blinders. Be open.
Mm.
Look around, especially in this day of AI. You know, you gotta start thinking out of the box.
Yes.
Because the traditional jobs are not gonna be the way they were before.
Mm. Thank you for saying that. So, yeah, this is your first book. I'm pretty sure we may be hearing from your pen again. What can we expect with you going forward? You're a young man, and you still have a lot of value and impact to give to both the U.S. and to Jamaica.
Absolutely.
Where's your vision there in your next phase of life?
So absolutely, there are two phases. One is a continuation of my authorship, and in
Mhm.
fact, I have a second book already lined up in my head.
Oh, okay.
I won't reveal what it's about at this point because
Okay.
it's a little premature. But so I want to dedicate myself for the next 1 year to promoting this book, getting the message out there because I believe there's a lot of value in there. So I want to get it in the hands of as many people as I can. And then at the end of that year, I will start to work on the second book. Um, but alongside that, part of my dream, my work life, during my work life, I did some volunteer work, which I talk about in the book, um,
Okay.
which brought me great satisfaction. Um, and I hope to find my niche in my retirement to do that as well, you know. So I am looking for that opportunity to where I can give of myself philanthropically, my time. So that's gonna be in concert with my continuing authorship. You know.
That's wonderful. So I know some people are going to be eager to really sink their teeth into this book. How can they get a copy of this?
Okay, so it's available currently in 3 formats. It's in ebook, paperback, and hardcover, and it's all available on Amazon. If you prefer Barnes and Noble, you can go to Barnes and Noble. It's pretty much available in any other book platforms, you know. But I tend to send everybody to Amazon. So you just go to Amazon, search for Life Lessons from Two Worlds, or search for My American Journey, or search for Eric G.W. Jones, and you'll find it.
Fantastic.
I also plan to start recording the audiobook, which I
Wonderful.
hope to complete sometime by the end of July, which I intend to do in my own voice, because as you may notice throughout the book, it's sprinkled with Jamaican proverbs and patois, especially where I'm
Okay.
recalling dialogue, you know. And you know, I want to voice that so people, you know, especially Jamaicans, will appreciate the patois pronunciations, and
Yes.
so that's my next job for the next maybe month and a half. I want to complete that recording ahead of what I hope to be an official launch of the book. I think I'm now in the soft launch phase.
Yes.
Once I have the audiobook done, then I'll have it in all 4 formats, and then I'll set up what I call an official launch.
That's so wonderful. Finally, my final question to you this. There's a young man, he's in Jamaica. He looks like young Eric Jones. Leave him a passing word that he would take steps, the giant steps that you have taken. What final word would you have for a young man like?
Never be limited by your circumstances, right? Never look around yourself and say, well, look, my circumstances are less than the other person, and therefore I can't, right? Never be limited by your circumstances. And always remember that a failure has value, right? You learn more from failures than from successes.
Yes.
Hang on to those things and just keep being ambitious, driving ahead, work hard, be willing to change route at some point. If you're going one direction and you seem as if it's not working, change path, you know. But always keep your eye on an ambitious prize, you know.
Amen.
Keep
Keep your eyes
working
on the
towards
prize.
something of value.
I can't thank you enough, Mr. Eric Jones.
.com. And to contact Eric Jones, visit ericgwjones.com. Thank you so much for spending time with us. We'll see you next time.